Okay, Michael. So when I'm thinking in terms of adversity, I think about some of the personal adversity we go through, but I'm also thinking about some of the collective. And one of the collective shadow sides here in the United States that's been showing its ugly head is racism. And I happen to notice that you're dark skinned and I'm light skinned. I know that whatever way, I can educate myself, I can listen, I can have empathy, but I can't have a knowingness of exactly what it's like to be a person of color in a society where there is still racism. And I want to get your perspective on Black Lives Matter and how we have the potential to shift this into a much more positive society.
Well, again, I think my life is a great microcosm of the consciousness of this planet. And here's what I mean by that. When I say adversity is your greatest ally, there's basically a simple principle called breakdown, breakthrough. Breakdown.
I love that in the book. I love that section. Yeah.
So for every breakdown or for every breakthrough is a breakdown. So I believe what's happening right now collectively is that we are in total breakdown. But it's a good thing because I don't believe race relations are getting worse. What I believe is that we are now seeing what needs to be healed in our country. Yeah. And so when I look at this whole...
It's illuminating what's been in the shadows for a very long time. Yeah.
Right. And so I think what happened collectively is, in general, a lot of white people had this idea that, hey, we had a Black president, so racism's gone. Racism doesn't exist because we got a Black president. Yeah. Well, see, there's a lot of, again, some systemic issues that were not being addressed that are now being brought to light. Yeah. And so, again, I'm an optimist. And what's really amazing to me as I look at this movement and what's going on, for example, the last couple of years, actually, is this whole conversation about white privilege and there's a new conversation. And this George Floyd situation, I believe what it has done, it cracked open the heart of America in a way that hadn't happened since Martin Luther King was killed. Because the brutality of how he was killed and that image, I think people have to start going, wow, there's something that has to change. And that's what has launched all of these movements. And once again, my optimism tells me that the universe is perfect by design. And what we're seeing is just a breakdown, which is preparing us ultimately for a breakthrough, because the younger generation that are really spearheading these marches, see, that's the next generation they were brought up in an era where we had a Black president and we have, Black people everywhere. So it's a different mindset. And I personally believe, this is just my personal belief, every generation expands in consciousness. Okay. So Barbara Marx Hubbard had an amazing book called Conscious Evolution. And she theorizes that human beings are evolving to what she called Homo universalis. Okay. Have you heard that term?
Yeah. And in fact, she was on my show before she passed. Yeah.
Okay.
And folks, you can go to the best of my radio show page and you'll find her interview. Yeah. But yes, go ahead. Tell us more.
She theorizes that human beings are evolving to Homo universalis. And I firmly believe that. We as a species are waking up. Collectively, we're still a very young species. If you really put it into the timeline of eternity, we're a very young species. And so we're waking up. And as painful and as difficult as it might feel right now, I personally believe it's laying the foundation for us to create a better union, a better society, a better world. Because you have to be willing to shine light on the dark places in our consciousness, those shadow parts of ourselves. And I believe that's what's happening. We're shining a light on those parts of ourselves collectively. And let me just say specifically, white people, because if you fell into that trap that racism doesn't exist today, and now you're seeing this, hopefully it's waking you up to the reality that yes,
Yeah.
there are still challenges, systemic challenges that we have to be
Yeah.
willing to fix. And I believe this
And I think
movement,
that
what's happening, is what's
I,
doing.
I think that's sorry, there's a bit of a delay. Um, I think that for some people, they thought, oh, well, it exists among certain people, a person here, a person there, the uncle at Thanksgiving who, says the obnoxious thing or whatever. But what the George Floyd situation illuminated is that it is systemic. I mean, we started, we could see this thing, occasionally here, occasionally there. But I think we've come to realize that it is far more systemic than we allowed ourselves to believe. And I suspect that if you're a person of color, you've known it's been systemic for a long time, right?
Yeah. And again, if here's my perspective. Think about this. Now, I'm 60 years, well, I'll be 60 this year, a couple of months.
Uh-huh.
In my short lifetime, because I remember the 60s very vividly. And I remember back in the 60s when we had this little black and white TV. And on Sundays, we'd all get together, watch TV. And whenever there was a black person on television, it was a huge event. I mean, people were getting on
Yeah.
the
I
phone
remember
calling
that too.
because you didn't see black people on television, right? Well,
Uh-huh.
just in my short lifetime, I've seen us gone from not seeing black people on television to seeing black people actually owning television stations, creating their own
Yes.
content. So it's amazing how in
Right.
my short 60 years on this planet, this country has evolved. And it's not just
Uh-huh.
about race. What about gender? I mean, what about women? The
Yeah,
progress that women are making, it's amazing to me
absolutely.
to see what's
Hmm.
happening. So if you look at the trajectory that we've been on as a species, I say there's reasons for optimism because the direction
Yeah.
we're heading is toward that homo universalis idea that as human beings, we're coming to the understanding that we are all the same. We're all one. And I
Yeah.
believe that's what we're
Yeah.
evolving to.